Hi, folks. I want to talk a little bit about the quiz you took yesterday. A couple things. First off, I know it's kind of tempting to race through the reading if you do it at all and just kind of half guess at some of these answers and get the quiz done. You're really short-circuiting some of the opportunities you have to learn here. The idea isn't to pass the test, but you want to understand the history. So make sure you take the time to read it, and the videos are going to support that. Since the next week I'll be more present, if you guys will all be in the classroom. When you're working virtually, the temptation of just trying to skim through it, we got to watch that. Okay, there was a mistake I made. This is the test you guys took yesterday. This question here had an inaccuracy, and it's a good chance for me to kind of clarify something. Andrew Carnegie organized a horizontal consolidation, and actually that's wrong. Andrew Carnegie's work was more of a vertical consolidation, where John Rockefeller, in the oil industry, worked out what was a horizontal consolidation. I want to kind of clarify the difference between these two. And in today's lesson, you're going to look a little bit about how Andrew Carnegie developed his vertical consolidation of the steel industry. So let's take a look and see what the difference is between these two. And that question, obviously, I'm going to throw out. There's 12 questions in this test. I just won't count that one. Now, if you think of horizontal, think of the horizon, which goes from this point. So you take a look, see how that's kind of a horizontal axis. This is a vertical axis. Now, these are examples. One is a meat packing plant, and one is producing oil. Now, when we talk about Andrew Carnegie, obviously we're talking about the production of steel, not cows. But if you think about it, vertical consolidation in the meat industry means that say, for example, Armour or any kind of meat packing company has to take control first off of cows. That's where meat starts. Okay, now the cows are taken to the slaughterhouse, and so they would have to own some slaughterhouses too. And then the refrigerated railroad cars that would take them to warehouses and meat packing plants and to delivery. That meaning that Armour or Swift or any company would have to go and own from the first step of production to the place where it's sold. Now, for Andrew Carnegie, it wasn't cows, obviously, but to him, the raw materials involved in producing steel involved lots of coal, which was used to refined as coke, which put the carbon in the steel, and then the iron. And then, of course, so you have iron, you have coal, and then transportation networks. And then you take those to the mills, and the mills would make the raw iron or the steel. And then eventually, Carnegie wanted to get to the point of making specialty steel, whether it's rails, beams, nails, what have you, anything that could be made from steel. And that would be a vertical consolidation. So, meaning that from the beginning to the end, think of a vertical line. Horizontal integration, John D. Rockefeller's example of Standard Oil is that. So, what Rockefeller would do is if he could control every one of the oil refineries, everybody who could compete with him, he would bury. He would bury. And one of the things that Rockefeller realized he could do, and his nickname was Rockefeller, because Rockefeller could find a competitor a bit smaller than him, and Rockefeller would be willing to take a loss. He'd be willing to sell his things at a loss. And by doing that, he could make his competitors, whose banks weren't as deep, would go bankrupt. And eventually, he would buy them for pennies on the dollar. And then once that competitor was gone, and once that person's competitor's oil refinery was now under his control, he could raise the prices again. And Rockefeller used every piece of leverage he could, whether it's forcing railroads to give him rebates on lower rates, which of course could give him a competitive advantage. Rockefeller saw this as creating order in a disorderly, a kind of a chaotic environment in the oil industry. But generally speaking, what we see here is something different. It's a creation of a monopoly. If you ever play Monopoly, the goal is to be the only guy who owns any property, and you can set the rates as you wish. So that's basically what we're talking about in this case. All right, so there we go, and that's it. So today's lesson, we're going to be looking at Andrew Carnegie, and it's a short video, and you'll have to answer using the APE format a question reflecting what you've learned from the movie. So please watch the movie carefully, and we're looking for specific evidence and an argument and explanation. Okay, folks? That's it.